applying this stuff in various ways has helped us, or like what new thoughts like come to mind in light of our rereading this together?
Yeah.
Um, so you had some thoughts when we were off stream briefly,
Hmm.
and like you had something to say about the value of letting angry people speak.
Yeah. About being aware of your own reactions in situations like that, because I have trouble controlling my temper sometimes, and then when an angry or irritable person shows up, I kind of have a knee-jerk reaction. It's gotten better, but back during near the end of my grocery store days, it was getting really difficult. Part of it was
Yeah, it was.
Like I wasn't really meditating consistently. The other part was I was done with that job, and then the third part was that well, yeah, there were just two parts to it, because I was going to say I wasn't really emotionally aware, but yeah.
But you're like, really? That goes back to like not meditating on
Yeah,
top of being done with the job. Okay, I get it.
yeah. Um,
Uh,
not only emotionally unaware, but just unaware of things that were going on in my body. Like I wasn't paying attention to my breath and stuff, going back to what you were saying earlier about breath. So
Bing bong.
it makes it really difficult to handle someone who is gonna start yelling at you, because sometimes it's like a physiological reaction. Like I've had both the flight and the fight response in those situations. The flight of like just, kind of running away, and then the fight of like arguing with them. And like in those types of situations, like a customer service job, it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've learned over time to really meditate every day and understand that people are probably going through their own stuff, and it's really not personal. Like it's not like, yeah, you're receiving their direct anger, but it's not actually because of you.
It's not. It's not about.
It's not about you, basically,
It's just
because the problem is like, uh, when we're irritable people, we take things very personally.
right.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are irritable people.
What are you talking about? I'm a Taoist sage and shit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, the sage is not offended. I'm just kidding. Um, I would say that I've become less irritable by default.
Yeah,
But like going back to what you were saying, like when I don't meditate, when I don't work out, when I don't, because like somebody asked me what my daily routine was like on one of my disability AMAs,
yeah,
and my daily routine's boring because like most during COVID, it's focused primarily on self care and then like personal projects. My self care routine is I wake up in the morning, I like meditate, do yoga. Like I do yoga, then meditate, and then like later in the day I'll do like 2 to 3 miles, 2 to 3 mile roll basically, and then like at night I journal. And the way that I journal is a very specific way for me. It's like if any of you are familiar with Seneca's letter to Lucilius, I basically write a letter as the person needing advice, and then I answer that like from the point of view of somebody who understands life better than I do.
yeah,
Because the thing is, there's this lack of awareness of like what you know and what you don't. And like writing it from two different points of view helps me to maintain like cognitive distance
Hmm.
between me and my feelings and like prevent like large amounts of like cognitive fusion, right?
Right.
Um, that's my self care routine, and that's why I do it. But on days where I don't do those things, I notice I am more irritable because maintaining a certain level, like maintaining an awareness of your thoughts, takes practice.
Yeah.
And like sometimes what you'll find when you start meditating is that you'll notice the physiological signs before the thoughts conjure.
Yep.
Um, at least that's what I've noticed. So like all of this stuff requires like intentional cultivation, or like subjecting yourself to so many experiences that you don't like that you eventually learn how to cope with them. Um, hopefully in healthy ways, but like that's more of a haphazard approach that I don't necessarily recommend. Um, I think that once you start uncovering your own shortcomings,
Hmm.
it's good to find experiences um, that make you uncomfortable
Yeah.
for the purpose of like learning how to be uncomfortable with them and like what your boundaries actually are, because you might find that they're different. For example, like with a socially anxious person, it's a good idea to like gradually get them to be more social. Like, you know, speed dating is really uncomfortable, but it's great for getting over yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's one example. Like I had a friend speed date because she was horrified talking to people, and I'm like, well, speed date, and then like that way you'll get to meet like 30 people in a night for like 5 minutes, and you'll get to learn something about people that you didn't know before, and then you'll learn something about how your subjective experience of it is, and
Yep.
then like at the end of the day, like remember to yourself that you're like, even though you're uncomfortable, you're still okay,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Um, so there, I mean, that's just how I look at it. Like, if for whatever reason you think meditation is complete bullshit, even though there's a lot of evidence to support that it is actually like beneficial, it's whatever. Like personally, I would say you're wrong based on evidence. But like, if for whatever reason you're one of those people that's like, it doesn't work for me because you don't really understand what you're doing. There are a lot of other things you can do. Um,
Yeah.
One thing that I still use that I started using when I was a kid was imagine a story. Like so when you're in like an emotionally heated situation, imagine a story where you are that person. Imagine the events that could make you feel the way that they do. And even if that's not really what happened to them, right? Even if that's
Yeah.
not the truth, it's real.
Yep.
You've taken like you've taken a step toward trying to understand that person, and it doesn't matter if these things are factually accurate. The point is that you put yourself in a position to understand the kind of situation that might put someone in that mental space, and by doing that you're less likely to lose your temper with that person.
Yeah. That's a writer trick, but for emotional balance.
Yeah, it's actually part of NLP, I think.
It's part of what?
NLP, neuro linguistic programming.
Yeah. I didn't hear you at first.
But yeah.
But I was gonna say Neil Gaiman says the same thing when you're creating a character.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. The writer's trick.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we both
By the
really.
way, I'm taking master class by Neil Gaiman. So
Yes, Neil Gaiman is the master.
yeah, and I was gonna say this later, like off stream, but um, I don't know because I don't think it's really relevant. I don't know. I'll just tell you later.
I don't care if it's relevant or not.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that guy Neil Gaiman. His way is being a writer. Like it's more than a profession.
Right.
Like that's like he doesn't need to meditate because he meditates with writing.
Yeah. So for oh, there's so many connected topics. I don't know how relevant they all are. Uh,
Yeah, Because what you just described, like, it reminded me of what I was reading in the workbook.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to.
because creative people, writers, basically storytellers, have to create compelling characters, and sometimes you're not always gonna have people in life who have those characteristics. So you kind of have to be imaginative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I think Taoism encourages you to be more imaginative, because when you're angry all the time or you're consumed by anxiety, there's less room to imagine, and imagination gives you windows into other perspectives that you otherwise might not consider.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what meditation helps with. That's what journaling helps with. And I'll go on a limb and say, like, if you are a writer who is trying to write fiction and create these characters that might not be real, like they don't exist, but you want to make them feel real. Like, empathy and imagination are useful tools.
Yeah. Imagination to me breeds empathy. Like, I posted this was a while back, but I posted an article about like how reading increases empathy.
Yeah.
And like I had someone say that, oh, I like the idea, but I disagree. And then like I posted a scientific article which they didn't read. Because like what the study said clearly is that it depends on what you're reading.
Yeah.
If you're reading biography and like popular science type stuff and philosophy, like I spent a lot of years with those topics.
Mm-hmm.
And those don't have the same effect. In fact, the more I read that type of stuff, the more certain I became about my view of the world, and the less complete and nuanced that view became. It's not true for everyone, but it was true for me.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a thing where I read one nonfiction book and then a fiction book. And then nonfiction fiction. Nonfiction fiction.
Yeah.
In the nonfiction, the topic doesn't really matter to me. I like read anything. Like I read everything from history to biography to like science to sometimes philosophy, although I'm less inclined toward that now.
Mm-hmm.
To like sociology to psych, doesn't matter. And like kind of going along with that, like because a theme in Taoism is be flexible.
Yeah.
So there's a story. I'm thinking about doing one more stream on Taoism. I'm not sure, but like where we pick like certain things from Zhuangzi,
Yeah.
like very specific things that we like individually,
Mm-hmm.
and then each of us will talk about what we picked and like read it and why. Right? Maybe.
Right.
Just kind of to wrap up Taoism on the whole.
Right.
Like, so to me now, I was raised very Asian. So everything had a goal. Your education had a goal to prepare you to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or computer scientist. Like my grandpa didn't really understand computer science, but like sort of. Hi Ashley, this is tail end of our Taoism thing, but the way that I was raised was like everything had a goal. So education just had a goal of giving me a good job, which meant that I could then buy a house and a car and do all the things and have like a girlfriend, wife, kids, and I'm dead.
Right.
That was pretty much the worldview. My grandfather was born in 1934, so can't really blame him. What I've learned since then is there's no real goal in life except what you make it. So if you, and I've met people like this, if you are happy working a job that just pays okay, Like, I've met people who are genuinely happy working customer service jobs for 30 years.
Oh yeah, same.
And, like, they used to do other things that made them more money, but for whatever reason, they just kind of gravitate toward jobs like that.
Yeah.
And then people get judged for that.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Oh, you have so much more potential. Right? That's a word that gets thrown around a lot. That was thrown at me. It was like a
Hmm.
weapon, right? Because if I wasn't doing certain things, I wasn't living up to my potential.
Yeah.
Like, if I wasn't studying law, philosophy, science, like math and all that, like the Asian stereotype subjects,
Yeah.
like then I wasn't doing anything worth it because like I had better potential than that. But what I liked doing was making crappy stories on my computer with that Spider-Man program that HP gave you.
Hmm.
Like, and I made some funny ones. And, like, that's what I like doing. And then, like, my grandpa was like, oh, well, why aren't you doing anything useful? So then, like, I made, like, Siri before Siri. Like, I wrote it in, like, an old version of Visual Basic, and it, like, used, like, Microsoft's early text, like, speech recognition API.
Right.
And, like, it was just a search buddy. Like, all it did was, like, search various search engines for like whatever I said, and it gave me like the top results filtered by like certain criteria that I gave it. And like they told me I was spending too much time messing around
Hmm.
and not focusing on like what was important, and to them it was academics. I
Yeah.
hated academics. To this day, I hate academics. I would much rather do things that I think are important than what somebody tells me is important.
Hmm.
And like Taoism actually gave me the feeling that that was okay.
Yeah.
Because what Zhuangzi says is something to the effect of like, it doesn't, your goal doesn't matter. Just keep kind of going in that direction and be willing to look at what's around you along the way.
Yeah.
And along the way, you'll find things that like, I forgot who used this term, but like they use the metaphor of like a cup of butterflies to like signify the beauty in life that you find randomly, right? You'll
Right.
fill your butterfly cup along the way, and then you might end up at your destination that you originally intended before you set on the journey, but you might not, and you might find that it's worthwhile spending time at little detours on the side of the road.
Right.
So I don't really like make strict plans for the future anymore. Like I just sort of was like, okay, this is kind of the thing I was sort of want to do, and like I'm just gonna figure out how those pieces fit together.
Right. Right.
And so far, that's been working out better than anything I tried to do for the last 30 some odd years. So, like things finally feel like they're coalescing because I let go of the plan.
Yeah. For me and Taoism, uh, like for the Rayleigh's Bel Air thing, I was fired from that job. But the funny thing was, I was ready to leave that job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, you were.
So it was kind of serendipitous that um, I was let go right when the COVID quarantine actually started, or around that time, like shortly before it started. And so, like, of course, I felt a little shocked, but then at the same time, like, there was a sense of um, I don't want to say like, well, there's a sense of relief, a sense of freedom, and a sense of fate, if that makes sense. Like, oh, this was going to happen anyway, and I was okay with that. Everyone around me was worried, or like, oh, what am
Oh,
I gonna do?
I think
And
it was like everyone but me.
yeah, well, because you already knew what I was thinking before all of that happened. Hell, I didn't even know. I just knew I wanted to get out of there because I was just done. And so I put in applications for different things. I worked for Amazon for a little bit. That was like a month, I believe. Um, and then I didn't really like it. And so um, I made plans to quit and started searching for another job. And specifically, I wanted to work at a cannabis dispensary or something around that. And then my reasons were, part of it was the novelty, um, being associated in that industry. Another part was like a genuine desire to learn more about the plant itself and how people use it and how the industry actually works.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I really didn't know if I was going to actually achieve that. Luckily, because I was putting my resume out on Indeed.com, I got lucky, and one of them actually emailed me for a group interview, and here I am. And it was strange because after the training and all of that, like I felt a distinct sense of euphoria, and that was because like this was the first real. I mean, you could say Amazon as well, but Amazon, their hiring practices are so like machine-like. They don't care who you are, just show up and then you'll get the job. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Pretty haphazard. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Like, we both know someone else that works there that we're surprised is in the position that they're currently in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just leave it at that.
But with this job, it was more like they were searching for specific types of people, and I fit that description. And it was like this was a job that I got on my own merits rather than, because with the Bel Air Rayleighs, my mom had worked there for decades, so that job was basically guaranteed for me. It's a very nepotipitous. That's not even a word.
Nepotipity.
Yeah, but I know a lot of people got that job. Nepotitious? It was a form of nepotism.
Yeah, there we go. That's the one we know.
Yeah, and that's because I've known other people who've gotten jobs because someone in the family has worked there. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Especially if you come from a family like they're Latino or Filipino or any other, like that's how people usually get those types of jobs. Not all the time, but you know what I mean?
I mean, but that's when people are basically guaranteed those jobs, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
And with
other people can get those jobs, but like there's also a subset of applicants that are almost guaranteed because of who they know.
yeah, so with the cannabis job, like I got it on my own merits. I did it because I wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, so and that was kind of a challenge too, dealing with the euphoria because we kind of want euphoria. And so I was finding myself like being kind of like I felt good and all that, and I found myself, there was part of me that was like, oh, like yeah, I'm dope and all that. Like it was kind of like an arrogant loop, and luckily because I was still meditating and all that, like I got a handle on it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was just, to me, that was like a lesson in like, we focus so much on controlling negative emotion that we forget things like euphoria can also be kind of detrimental. Because then we could fall flat on our ass one day, or the euphoria goes away, and then we just feel kind of wanting, like kind of depressed even. But luckily, but luckily that didn't happen to me because I was just like, yeah, I'll ride this euphoria wave for as long as it goes. But like, to be honest, I just wanted it to be kind of over.
Yeah.
As strange as that might sound to some people.
It's funny that man, so much of this reminds me of Buddhism. It's like, it's not to like jump the gun and just start talking about Buddhism.
But I was going to circle back to Taoism really quick. So the thing about not having a goal, or like just looking for other ways to um, live your life more authentically. Because I didn't want to work at Amazon for a year. I knew that, and I know I talked to a lot of people who just stayed there because the pay and the health benefits. And I could have easily justified that to myself too, but there was something in me that really, really didn't want to. Like, there was a disconnect between like the amount of time and physical energy you spend over there and the money you actually get paid. I was getting paid more than when I was working at Bel Air, but to me it wasn't really worth it. It wasn't really worth the effort.
Dude, you were miserable at Amazon.
Yeah, so it was being aware of myself and like actually being true to myself, like asking myself serious questions, like, is this really worth it? Am I actually like living my life the way I want to?
So, like, to give you guys some idea, like, we were taking a math class at that time to, like, the heaviest part of the math class we were in was taking place at the time you were working at Amazon.
Yeah.
And, like, we're people that used to get really frustrated with each other sometimes. And when it was, like, really bad, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But, like, at that point, we hadn't really been frustrated with each other for a long time. And, like, this dude would, like, yell at me for stupid reasons. And I'll be like, dude, I'm just trying to finish this test. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was
Yeah, go ahead.
pretty consistent. I was like, man, like, maybe you need to quit. Like, because, like, that was the thing that changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I get, like, and we had a series of long ass talks about that too. Like, sometimes, guys, money's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your only option, right? Like, I used to say this to an ex, and she used to hate it because it confused the crap out of her. Cause, well, it probably still would. But what I used to say is you're only capable of selecting from options your mind can conceive.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are not necessarily morally, I'm just going to say, if you're personally opposed to a certain course of action, even though it's viable,
Yeah.
you're going to think that's not a choice you can make. So, one of the things that, like, talking about broadening perspectives and goallessness and things, like, because I think it's sort of the same mechanism, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, now when we think of choices, you and I, we will inherently think of things, like, we will purposely, rather, think of things that we know we wouldn't normally think of. On purpose, just to remember that, like, the things we may not like are also options if it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely don't like web development anymore, but if it comes down to it, and I feel like that's the only way that I can competently earn money, then that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like it.
Yeah.
There are things I still like about it, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still an option if I need it.
Right.
And because if I don't look at that, then that's discounting an entire skill set that I spent, like, more than a decade building.
Yep.
And it's rusty, but it's a lot easier to pick it up again than it was to learn it the first time. So Dr. Schubert in his TED Talk, the thrust of that message was free and easy wandering from Zhuangzi, and the way he encapsulated it is everything has its this and everything has its that. Right?
Right.
So, like, a block of wood can be carved into anything.
Yep.
That's like the void. The uncarved block and the void are basically synonymous, right? Once you carve it into a thing, its primary use then becomes the thing you carved it for. So, like, if you carve it into a statue, its primary use is to be a decoration.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's also made of wood.
Right.
So it can, like any other hard object, it can be used as a doorstop. It can be used as a paperweight. It can be painted to change its quality.
Yeah.
It can even be burned,
Yep.
right?
Right.
So, like, those are just a few uses of a statue.
Yep.
I mean, everything in life is kind of like that. You have to turn it around in your mind and see, like, what other non-traditional uses does this situation have for me?
Mm-hmm.
In my case, like, being impetuous, impulsive, and smart led to, like, a weird set of circumstances where I had a lot of money and then I lost it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I was, like, super down on myself. But what that made me realize is that, like, if I could get to that point once, I can do it again if that's what I want.
Right.
Because I did it twice. The first time I had $250,000. The second time I was making $80,000 a year for 5 years, tax free.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to do that again, I can
Right.
because I know how to do it. Because I did it more than once. Once is luck. Twice isn't luck.
Yeah.
So, like, I had to stop thinking of those things as setbacks and start looking at them as, like, teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, real teachers. Like, I'd imagine these experiences, like, embodied as people in my head, and I would start talking to them, like, in my mindscape.
Right. Right.
And being like, what were you trying to show me? And then they would recap the experience, like, what do you see here? Like, what do you see when you look at yourself? Do you see somebody who was, like, narrow-minded, obsessive, or do you see someone who was hardworking and diligent and, like, who only had the capacity to focus on the one thing you were doing at the time?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like, working with frames. And, like, I think that's a very useful thing to take away. Divergent thinking as well as convergent thinking together are both necessary,
Yep.
right? Um, what about Taoism and, like, autism?
That's interesting. Well, being on the spectrum.
Yeah,
Well, I already mentioned, like, I've had trouble controlling my temper, and a lot of that's the autism.
yeah.
So going into that, I seem to have this obsession. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about obsession. I have small obsessions with things like time. Like,
You
what
do.
time should we do this? What time should we do that? Like,
You're
I
too
set it
cool.
up. Like, I don't even write it down. Like, it's set up in my brain.
Yeah,
And uh, and it's just like when I do set a time, like I tend to pick the same time consistently because, well, it just makes sense in my head, even though like I really should be kind of flexible sometimes. And
yes,
it's weird because as I've gotten older, I've become more like obsessed with time. I don't know if it's because like I'm getting older and I'm just like, oh shit, I'm gonna die one of these days. But it doesn't really get that extreme. It's just like it's something I've noticed, something that my brain really desires, and I've encountered that in meditation because
Mm.
meditation allows you to really just see how your mind works. And I found so there's the time obsession, also other things like
Are you looking for your DoorDash?
what?
You looking for DoorDash?
Yeah, my ride's on the way actually.
Okay.
But I was gonna say stimming and all that. I don't do it as much as when I was younger, but I still do it. Um, and anyone who's on the spectrum will understand this. Like stimming is kind of like a response to like being overwhelmed or uncertain. Sometimes it's in reaction to excitement, like you're excited about something. Like let's say I got a new video game that I really like. Well, you know, it's part of the series I really like, or it's a type of game I like. Also, I was gonna say more about uncertainty. Like people on the spectrum are more afraid of uncertainty than I think more neurotypical people. I mean, we're all, as a species, we're all kind of afraid of it, but it's like,
It's like you have certain dials, and for
yeah,
some
like someone threw a
spectrum,
wrench in there and
yeah,
you really can't function. Like, self care goes out the window. Um, I mean, it doesn't really get dramatic like that, but it can get like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that I will probably say about that point is like for people on the spectrum, I think mindfulness meditation is very useful.
Hmm.
I think not a lot of people. I'm not just talking about people on the spectrum. I think a lot of people on at all don't really understand what it is. And if
Yeah.
you don't understand what it is, find someone who does, and then learn it from them. Because um, there's no one right way to meditate. There are a bunch of different techniques and things that you can do, but like there are a lot of wrong ways
Yeah.
to do it. Also,
Yep.
because one of the things about like being on the spectrum is like I man, I've had a history of like meltdowns, and those are not the same as like tantrums. Tantrums are as a result of like not getting what you want.
Yeah.
Meltdowns I would characterize as like your mind has certain expectations that it thinks it needs, and then a combination of like sensory overload, emotional overload, and a lack of met expectations lead you to like feel entirely overloaded, and like you have no control of what that comes out as.
Yeah.
So it looks different for different people. Like some people on the spectrum will literally curl into a ball and like not speak for hours.
Yep.
They
Yep.
won't necessarily even cry. They'll just sit there and they won't speak. For me, like I would hit myself
Yep. Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
I almost knocked myself out one day. Um,
Yeah. For me, I tend to stay quiet and isolate myself. Sometimes I'll just get really angry. So yeah, and then I eventually fall asleep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a while. Like because some people I know have been up for a couple days before they finally crash.
Yeah.
And so for people on the spectrum, I think it's important to like preemptively manage those emotions before they develop into conditions that rise in the form of a meltdown.
Yeah. Taking the maxims of like people aren't always going to be rational and stuff. Those tend to help me a lot. Same thing with uncertainty of the future. I mean, oh gosh, if I got fired from Bel Air like 5 years ago, I would be like I was
You'd
a
be
completely different
screwed.
person then. Whereas, this year, like I've become used to uncertainty, so like
We're ready.
yeah, so it's always being ready for uncertainty. Like you're never gonna know what's gonna happen next.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, so it's more the idea of getting not necessarily getting comfortable with it, but at least being used to it.
at this point, it's weird because I would say I'm starting to actually get comfortable.
Yeah.
Where like I actually want things to make me uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Except snakes.
Yeah.
That's not uncomfortable. That's like petrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's life or death right there.
Yeah. And like I don't care what you say, it's evolutionary. I'm supposed to be afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
Um, also, like I guess this is my attempt to like make it real. I'm like working on trying to figure out how to like get my like life coaching certification, so I can actually teach this crap to people because I think it's really important. And the subset of the community I'm most interested in serving are people with disabilities because I think a lot of people that are working with people that have disabilities, whether it's like something like autism or whether it's like CP, spina bifida, people like grieving the loss of physical function due to accident. Um, these are people not being very well served necessarily by people who don't really have a perspective because they haven't had to think about it.
Yeah.
And like I've been meditating for a long time. I'm comfortable enough sharing that with people now. I'm not gonna say like I'm an expert. Like I'm never gonna be.
Right.
But I can. And like sometimes in life, you have to do something because you can.
Yep.
Like that's just me. Like I just think you have to do something because you can, and because I can, and because I have like personal experience with like directionlessness and like people not understanding like the certain types of challenges that like people like me face. Like not having someone I can talk to about that and help me work through it. Like um, was very difficult. And if I can do something to kind of get rid of that, like I'm gonna do it. Um,
Yeah.
Congratulations on finishing your English class, Ashley. I heard you killed it. Um, and that's the thing too. I want to tell people like from the outset that there is no timeline to life.
Hmm.
Right? The only thing you know is when you were born. You don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know what the conditions of your life are going to be like. And
Yeah.
there's no like set periods to like, oh, I bought my first house at 22. I am successful. I finished my residency at Hospital X in this year, and now I'm a licensed physician.
Yeah.
I am successful, and therefore other people are not. It doesn't work that way. And like people with like disabilities specifically struggle with this because everyone else seems to move at a certain timeline and they don't,
Yep.
because they're facing very different challenges. Like, um, we have to deal with people's perceptions in a different way.
Right.
And sometimes those perceptions and those expectations put on us and the way they're put on is very, very like destructive. And yeah. But there are ways through it. There are ways around it. I'm trying to learn different approaches because, like, my default approach is the one I used, which is like uh, how would you describe it?
Your default approach?
Yeah, like my default approach that led to now. Like, what would you characterize that
Damn. Like bashing your head against the wall?
as? Why would you say that?
Oh wait, your default approach, like in what way? Like
Like,
approach to problems, or
well, the approach I would pass on to somebody else, like if they were to ask me to coach them now.
oh now? Oh, I thought you were talking about the past.
No, 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 no. Well, see, here's the thing. My approach now grew out of that.
Yeah.
So you're not entirely wrong.
Like what do I think?
What would you characterize it as? Like, if
Oh,
you,
that's difficult because my brain wants to resort to fictional characters because
well, do it and then describe that in real world terms, if that works for you.
I kind of think about Robin Williams' character from Good Will Hunting,
Shit.
which is funny because he's a therapist but not a life coach. But what you're doing is kind of therapy, but not. I don't know, like, but I'm just saying that dude's approach and his character and how he gets Will to open up and actually face the psychological issues that he has.
Yeah.
And the way Williams' character does it is by actually having a conversation with him, understanding what kind of person Will is, and because Will's very intellectually arrogant in the film,
Right.
whereas Williams' character, yeah, he's intellectual, but he's had like life experiences that have taught him to be humble and to and his character seems like he's not a pushover at all. Like he's actually he has a backbone. And that's kind of what I think your approach would. That's kind of how I would characterize it. Like, if not a little bit more like aggressive,
Yeah, I was just gonna get to that because
naturally aggressive person, but I would say like a more aggressive form of that character.
it's weird, right? Because like my mo with myself is
Hmm.
literally like I don't care if I'm uncomfortable. Like if I want to do it, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And like that makes a lot of people shut down.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm working on learning different approaches because like the only one I have is the one that worked for me,
Yeah.
and it pulled from multiple like philosophical areas and research and all that sort of thing. But like it primarily comes from like my upbringing and fleshing out that upbringing with stoicism because like there was more to it than I grew up with.
Yeah.
Um, but like that doesn't work for some people because some people like I guess you could classify me as an HSP if you wanted.
Yeah.
There's a subtype called the intellectual HSP, which you can look up on YouTube. It's pretty interesting. That actually fits. But like, so I took that and I made myself less sensitive using those qualities. But that doesn't work for everyone, and not everyone is willing to go that route.
Yeah.
I want to help as many people as I can, but no matter what I do, there are always going to be people that I'm not a good fit for.
Right.
Because like I think that in order to like become comfortable in life, you have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's a show I'm thinking about, and uh, the way you described your approach reminded me of one of the intervention or whatever it's called. It's that show where they get interventionists in the
I
family.
think it is called intervention. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was one interventionist who like reminded me of you. Like he was aggressive with his questioning, and he wanted to get down to the bottom of why this family. Because it's more than just like, oh, this person's screwing up. Like they look into not just that person, but their family and how they grew up and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, why is this person fallen to addiction? It's more than just his own individual choices. It's also upbringing and stuff. And
And like,
families get very defensive about
oh yeah,
stuff like that. But that interventionist was just like, no, answer the question.
because it's not going to get fixed if you don't acknowledge what's going on.
Yeah, so it's that type of approach.
Like the thing that I've learned in life is that nothing is entirely one person's fault,
Yeah,
right? And it's not entirely like one person's responsibility. Unfortunately, uh, life kind of funnels down to now it's your responsibility to make it better.
yeah,
That does often fall on the shoulders of one person, the
hmm,
person suffering with addiction in the case of the show intervention.
yeah,
But like it's not entirely their fault
yep,
because there are a set of circumstances that they were then predisposed to via their environment. Um, Unmet needs is a huge part of it, and then like once you realize all that, you're like, well, I see how you got here.
yeah,
And like when people don't acknowledge the role they played, because it's not about blame, it's acknowledging the role you played so that you can change the way you interact.
yep,
And a lot of people get really resistant to doing that.
yep.
So yeah, my approach can be kind of harsh. So I'm trying to learn like how to do different things.
Yeah, I turned out all right, I think.
Well, you asked me for the harshest version of myself, and like,
Yeah.
I will never do that again.
Yeah, trial by fire. Well, trial by hell in my case.
That's my default mode. If you want to know my real default mode, that's it.
Yeah.
But that's not. That's made for people like me.
Yeah. So
And
yeah,
I told you not to ask me to do that.
yeah, I know, but I didn't know any better.
That
And
it hurts to inhabit that mindset because it's like literally, especially at the time, it was everything I hated about myself.
yeah,
And you were asking me to do that for your own benefit. And I'm like, oh Jesus,
yeah,
you don't know what you're asking me to do. Like I was really, I was conflicted about that for a long time after. By the way,
oh yeah, so was I. And mostly it was from myself.
yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah. So that's what I'm doing. Hopefully it works out. If not, then I'll just talk to you like a normal human being and figure out a way to help you anyway.
yeah,
If you're out there watching and you think that would be beneficial, I promise not to be a drill sergeant. That's just what he wanted, and like I hated it.
yeah. Don't not recommended.
No, don't ask someone to do that. You don't understand.
Yeah.
You just don't understand. I'm like, dude, I've scared former drill sergeants before,
Hmm.
and they were like, "Where did you learn that?" And I was like, "That's how I was raised, sir.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised." And that's all I could say because
Hmm.
I mean, it's the truth, but then there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And so now I'm trying to put it away because I find that it's not very,
Yep.
it's not, it's useful, but it's not the most effective way to do anything except prepare people for war.
Yep.
And I'm not preparing anyone for war. I no longer look at life as a war, and I need to put that mentality in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what my current path is trying to allow me to do. Put it in a box and find better tools.
Yeah.
Because that is really a hammer for all situations type of mentality. Uh, anything else you want to say about Taoism?
Um. No, I think I said everything I wanted to say about how this has helped me in my life.
Yeah. The biggest thing that it taught me is eventually, like, um, just to kind of summarize, like, be okay with wandering and not necessarily having a goal, but maybe having a direction you want to go in.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Um, uh, be a multifaceted, multi-perspectival type of thinker.
Hmm.
No matter what your default mode is, if you incorporate more than that, more of that in your own style of thinking, whatever, however you get there, it doesn't matter to me. It matters that you get there.
Yeah.
It will make your life better. It will make you more resilient. It'll make you kinder. If you value any of those things, then it's worth discovering the other two.
Yes.
But the biggest and most difficult lesson I learned was the opposite of how I was raised. Repressing emotions is bad. Like, there is no good in it in the long term. So, like, my brain is very crisis oriented naturally because I grew up in a weird house.
Yeah.
People would yell at you as a form of communication. They would use, like, money to bribe you to get good grades in the Asian way, right? Like, I'm not saying any of this is bad, but, like, that's just what it was.
Yeah.
And, like, and also, like, I remember, when I would cry or anything, or I would express any, like, emotion, they'd be like, shut the fuck up, or I'll give you something to cry about. And, like, that's just, so I ended up learning to just shove everything down.
Yeah.
And in the short term, it works because it allows you to look at the problem at hand and direct all of your energy toward a single problem. But when those problems are chronic and, like, in that they have, like, a long duration, it erodes your sense of stability.
Hmm.
And so what meditation and, like, contemplating Taoism, even at the academic level, taught me was that, like, no matter what I do, those emotions are going to bubble up if I don't deal with them.
Right.
And so there are times when I meditate where I'll be crying or, like, I relive some old ass memories and I just have to let it be there.
Yep.
And I'm like after the fact, I'm like, okay, what did that teach me?
Right.
And it's a long road, but it's a road you can travel, and it's a road you can travel with people you trust.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Did your food show up?
No, it's probably stuck in traffic. But
No.
to summarize for myself, I would say be okay with uncertainty. Yeah, that's a big lesson. Also, it cultivates a lot of patience both for yourself and other people
Mm-hmm.
if you apply it. Um, and then lastly, like just being open to different possibilities, whether that's like career, uh, friendships, relationships, romantic relationships, like just being open to all of that and not being so attached to outcomes.
Yes.
Because you could have like a bomb plan, but you know it
The
might
only
not
thing you can
actually.
control is the prep, right?
Yeah, basically everything else is pretty much outside of your control except for how you react to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you want a good book on Taoism that's pretty easy to understand, like I would recommend the Tao of Pooh.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's basically taking Winnie the Pooh and then having him and Christopher Robin talk about different Taoist concepts.
and other characters.
Yeah, and other characters. Basically, the cast of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
It's a really good book. Um, it's I'd say like take your time with it. It's pretty easy read.
I
Uh,
forgot you read that book.
yeah, I liked it a lot. Um, it's a book I would buy for friends if they're struggling with things like anxiety or if they're stuck in a rut in their life.
What about the Tao of Star Wars?
Yeah, that book too, especially if you're a big Star Wars buff. That book will help understand Tao's concepts really well, especially if you're into things like Jedi and Force.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's also, like, on the Buddhist end, there's the Dharma of Star Wars, which is actually a really good introduction to Buddhist philosophy.
yeah,
Um, the dude learned from the school of Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe. So, like, it's a Zen Buddhist tint on Buddhist philosophy, which is fine with me because apparently what I learned was Zen Buddhism and I didn't realize it
yeah,
until much later in life. I just thought I was doing Buddhism.
yeah, yeah.
And apparently, specifically, I am like, I lean hard Soto Zen, apparently. According to my brother-in-law, who is like, who studied Tibetan Buddhism for like 10 years, still continuing that alongside Korean Zen,
Yeah,
which is closer to like Japanese Rinzai. For those of you that don't know the flavors of random Buddhism, it's not that important. But like for those,
yeah, yeah. Don't concern yourself with such things.
that's not important. The Buddha didn't think it was important, so neither do I.
Yeah,
Um, I and if y'all have comments, man, I could point you to specific things. So like, nah.
yeah,
The old angry debater still lives.
Mhm.
But yeah, that pretty much summarizes my thoughts on Taoism. I hope you guys liked it.
yeah. Same.
This was interesting because, like, I don't think we ever read this book literally together
Hmm.
at the same time, even remotely. I think like it was always like 2 weeks to a month apart at the closest.
Yeah,
A month can make a it can make a huge difference.
yep.
We'll probably do this again for ourselves in like a year
Hmm.
and see if we pop up with new thoughts.
Yeah,
That's the great thing about short books like the Tao Te Ching is you can read them over the course of a week, even with discussion like we did here. If you look at it, 7 days.
yep.
And like, I really like the discussions we had. So like I'll probably do this again in a year.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be living here in a year. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
And then we won't need to stream this. Cut my hair this Wednesday.
Who knows? That might happen. Yeah. The Taoists don't teach Jedi mind tricks.
I learned that from the Sith.
Yeah.
Is your food still not there?
Because it's coming from Howe Avenue.
Where'd you order? Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's almost here. So yeah, I'm gonna be eating.
Yeah. Where'd you order?
Mel's.
No wonder why.
Yeah.
You gluttonous dude. Alright, enjoy the burger, man.
Yeah.
Let me know how it is. I'll hit you up later.
All right.
Alright, dude.
All right.
Bye.